Let's talk about some of the other aspects of this game on Saturday night, not just the running game. The defense, I thought, did a pretty good job. It was not perfect. It was not dominant, but they were handed a terrible, terrible hand by the offense and admirably stood up, I thought, for the majority of the game. You look at the first half, Ole Miss ran 49 plays in the first half. That's bordering a game. Like, you'd like to have your defense on the field for like 65 snaps or so. And you almost had 50 in the first half. LSU's offense, by comparison, only ran 24 plays in the first half. Ole Miss, which does not care about time possession at all, controlled the ball for 18 minutes in the first half. And the defense got tired, and they gave up 2 touchdown drives at the end of the first half when I think they were gassed. I mean, they gave up that 17-play drive to start things. That was the longest drive of the Lane Kiffin era in Oxford. But they did make things tough on Ole Miss's offense for the majority of the game. They gave up those 2 touchdowns late in the first half, and then I thought they got tired late in the game because they had been on the field for the whole game. And if you look at time of possession for the game, it was 32-28. But more importantly, it was the 84 plays that Ole Miss ran to LSU's 56. You ask the defense to be out there for 84 plays and they only give up 24 points. That's a pretty solid day at the office. Yeah, they had some pass interference penalties that weren't great. Yeah, Ole Miss, did move the football, and in terms of yardage, like, they did roll up 480 yards. So it wasn't a great day for the defense, but considering the circumstances they were handed, I thought it was a pretty good effort by Blake Baker's group to stand up for the majority of the game. Now, the other aspect of this, we talked offense with the running game. We talked defense there briefly. I did not think LSU's coaching staff did a very good job in the game. And that showed itself to me in 2 instances. The first instance was at the end of the first half. Ole Miss had the ball, and they were driving. And it got to 3rd and 2 from the 14-yard line, under a minute to play. And Lane Kiffin was content to let the clock run a little bit, down under a minute, in case they did not get the 3rd and 2, he could kick a field goal at the end of the half and LSU would not get the ball back. Brian Kelly saw Lane Kiffin doing that and used a timeout with 49 seconds so that if his defense got a stop, he could get the ball back with 30 seconds, 45 seconds to go try to get a field goal. That was a mistake to me. I tweeted it out in the exact moment, and I still feel exactly the same way 2 days later. Because what you did was stop the clock for Ole Miss, who then converted the 3rd down, and now have more time to operate before the half because you helped them by stopping the clock. Now, Ole Miss did have 2 more timeouts, so they could have used one, but Lane Kiffin wasn't using one with 49 seconds left, and LSU gave Ole Miss one. Did you watch LSU's offense? What indication would you have had that LSU was going to be able to go down there in 40 seconds and get a field goal? Nothing for me, and all you did was give Ole Miss, who was on the 14-yard line, a chance to run more plays. If this is a goal-to-go situation, and Ole Miss literally could only run 1 or 2 more plays because then you would have to either turn it over on downs or get points, well, yeah, then you call a timeout. But Ole Miss still had a chance to get a first down and run some more plays. I hated that timeout by LSU, and I believe it likely contributed to Ole Miss scoring a touchdown there with 16 seconds to go. Because after LSU's timeout, they ran the ball. They were short. It was 4th and 1. Ole Miss called timeout. Then Ole Miss went for it, got it, and then ran 2 more plays to score a touchdown. They may not have had time to run 3 more plays if you just let Lane Kiffin run the clock down. I thought that was a huge mistake. Then, in the second half, LSU had to burn 2 timeouts. One, because you had indecision on whether or not you were going to go for a 4th down, and then you ended up false starting. And 2, because you didn't have the right people on the field for a special team snap, and you had to burn a timeout. That is on coaching, and it burned 2 timeouts that you needed to try to stop Ole Miss at the end of the game when they were running their 4-minute offense that ultimately ran the clock out. That's a lack of preparation, lack of execution. I know there were injuries on the offensive line, but you can't burn that timeout. You got to know what you're doing on fourth down. You can't burn that timeout. And I just thought that was a very, very poor job of managing the clock and managing timeouts. And we saw a poor job of managing whether or not to go or kick in the Clemson game before the first half because you didn't pay attention to how much time was left on the clock, and you admitted that mistake. But like we've only played 5 games. You're getting to the close to halftime, and you're making these mistakes half the time. I did not like any of that either. So this is not, there was plenty of blame to go around. And somehow, some way, in a game where LSU could not run the ball at all, was completely inefficient throwing the ball down the field, botched the timeout usage, were penalized a truckload, and gave up 480 yards of offense, with all that going on, you were still right there. You were one stop away from getting the ball and having a chance to go down and win the game. And I think that's an indication of all the good that LSU has on this current roster. I think it's an indication of a defense that bent but did not break. Ole Miss, now I realize that there are skewed statistics this early in the season because you play teams that are a lower level and you blow them out and the stats get a little bit out of whack. And so I realize that in saying this, but you realize that Ole Miss entered the game averaging 44 points per game. You held them to 24. They were 20 points under their season average. They hung 40 on Arkansas, and they got after Kentucky offensively. And you held your own there, 20 points under their average. But you didn't do enough elsewhere. And to go on the road into a small yet hostile environment and play a team that is very well coached, that does have a good offense, you have to be a lot cleaner than that. And LSU just wasn't. And I thought there were a number of aspects to this game that were really, really disappointing. Now, last thing I'll get to here before we talk to Bryce Kuhn is the quarterback. And this is probably going to be a longer segment on tomorrow's show, but I don't have a great explanation for why a healthy Garrett Nussmeier would be playing at this level. This is a guy who led the SEC in completions last year, who was a top 5 passer all year in terms of production, and who this year is just not connecting with this talented group of wide receivers. Like, I know Barryon Brown is talented. I know Aaron Anderson's talented. I know Chris Hilton is talented. I know Trey'Dez Green is talented. Xavion Thomas, Kyle Parker, Nick Anderson. These guys are talented dudes. And LSU threw for 197 yards on Saturday. 62% completion. You're not able to hit the ball down the field at all with any consistency whatsoever. And so essentially, the only dimension that you have, and I said this on our postgame show on the LSU Sports Radio Network on Saturday, you hear the term one-dimensional all the time. LSU's one-dimensional. They can't run the ball, they're one-dimensional. Well, they only get one dimension of the dimension because in the passing game, which is your only dimension, you don't stretch the field. Well, they tried a little bit. They hit Xavion in the first quarter a little bit down the field, and they threw the ball deep for Barryon Brown a couple times, and they drew one pass interference call. But, like, you're not connecting on those with any sort of regularity. So, really, the only dimension that you have is the short passing game. And that's really easy to defend. And teams do. And that's why you're not scoring touchdowns. 2 touchdowns against Clemson, 1 touchdown against Florida, and then 2 touchdowns against Ole Miss. You get a pick 6 from Deshaun Spears against Florida, but like offensively, you're not doing anything. And it doesn't make any sense that Garrett Nussmeier would regress to this point with the same offensive coaching staff around him, with better weapons around him, and an offensive line that is not as good as last year's, but is not giving up a ton of sacks. He's just inaccurate, indecisive, made a bad throw. Like, it is odd. And I want to suggest that he's hurt. But I don't know that. I have no way of knowing that. All we can do is go on what we've been told. And Brian Kelly said on the record that he's fine. And Garrett Nussmeier has said he doesn't want to talk about it. And I told you on Friday, I had a conversation with someone in the building that I feel like would shoot me straight. I asked how Nussmeier was, and the answer I got was much better. I told you on Friday, like they said the Louisiana Tech week was the worst week for it. He overdid it in practice and probably should have sat. But since then, he's had 2 weeks to recover, and he's fine. That's what I was told. And all I can do is pass along what I'm told, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense that a guy that was routinely throwing for 340 on Saturdays last year is stuck around 180 now this year. That, to me, is really odd. If you told me that LSU's passing game stunk because the offensive line couldn't block and Garrett Nussmeier was getting sacked more than any quarterback in the SEC, I would go, okay, that makes sense. Like they lost all those great pass protectors and they're not really protecting the passer. They're doing an okay job protecting the passer. It's not the wide receivers are no good. It's not that it's a brand new offense. I can't figure it out.
There have been drops too.
There have been some drops.
There were drops in the Ole Miss game. There were drops last week against Florida. There's been. I'm not going to say it's just one of the other. One of the other ailments that has been plaguing this offense.
It's rotten. I mean, it's a bad offense right now. I mean, one of the touchdowns you got on Saturday was a tip drill that Nick Anderson caught out of the air. Not exactly how you drew it up in practice on Wednesday. I mean, and this is an Ole Miss defense. It's just not very good. It's just not. They don't have the horses. They got Sage Ryan and Deshaun Womack playing out there. I watched those guys.
Deshaun Womack looked pretty good.
He was offsides, but he got a sack. I don't have great answers for why LSU's passing game is what it is. I got answers for days on the running game. I know why that's bad. It's been bad for 3 years. Passing game, the only thing that I could speak to that makes a lot of sense is that Garrett Nussmeier is significantly compromised. And his mechanics are off, and his practice time is down, and he's just not comfortable enough to throw the ball. That's all I can think of, but I don't know it. I can't speak to that with any certainty at all. So we'll see. Brian Kelly said 2 weeks ago that Garrett Nussmeier, quote unquote, couldn't shut it down until the bye week. Well, bye week's here. Let's see if they shut it down. We'll see. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.